Again, if you ever miss a class and you want to check what was done in that class, I make a recording of each class and it's posted on Blackboard. You just have to go to the section that says class recordings. And you will see they're all there. They're numbered with a date. Don't forget, if you haven't done the quiz on Delta Math yet, if you want complete credit, if you want 100% credit of your grade, then you have to complete it by this evening. If you do it after that date, you will still get credit, but if you, let's say, get 100 on the test, instead of getting 100, you're going to get an 80. So try and do it before this evening. If you did the quiz, a couple people in class mentioned already, they did the quiz and then it's the first quiz, so sometimes you mess up a little bit. If you let me know, I will reset the test. I can either reset all the questions or just some of the questions, and I'll give you an extension on the time because I'd like to see you doing well on the quizzes and tests. So just either let me, I'm going to forget who I said this to. So, or I said yes to, I'm going to write it down, but it would be a good idea. Send me also an email reminding me that you'd like me to reset it. And I will do that. Again, I'll probably give you an extension until Sunday. Okay, so let's see if we can work on this problem. I see we did get an answer. Naya gave us answer. Her answers actually are correct. This equation is set up in the what we call the y equals mx plus b form, where the number in front, as long as you have y equals, the number in front of the x is what we call the slope. The symbol that's used for slope is m. The m is -2. The number that stands alone, that's not connected to an x, the constant, that's what we call the b. The b is the y-intercept, so the y-intercept is 3. And actually, if you have these two pieces of information, then it's fairly direct to be able to graph the line. How do we do that? Well, here's our piece of graph paper. Again, it would be nice if you had actual graph paper because then you could see the actual lines. I'm just doing tick marks, but there really should be lines going straight down all the way vertically. And then there should be lines going across horizontally. I'm just putting in tick marks. It would be just too hard for me to keep drawing all those lines. And for sure, they wouldn't come out straight, so it wouldn't help you much. When we have the slope and the y-intercept, the way to do the graphing using that information is to start at the y-intercept. The second number is what you look at first, actually. The y-intercept is where it's crossing the y-axis. It's right here. Put that point in. That's the first point that you're drawing on your line. By the way, another way of writing the y-intercept, if you want to write it in as a point, then what you have to write it as 0, the x is 0, the y is 3. It is perfectly okay to say that the y-intercept is 3, But if you're asked what point is it, the point is 0, 3, because every point on the graph has to really have two numbers. It has to have an X and a Y. Anything that's on the Y-axis has to have an X that's 0. Okay, the next thing we looked at, once we have that point plotted, we then go to the slope. Since the slope is -2, first of all, this is a whole number. And when we use it for graphing, we really need the slope to be a fraction. And we know any whole number can be written as a fraction by putting it over 1. So we could write this as -2 over 1, which means, remember, slope means rise over run. That means from the point that you first plotted, that y-intercept, you're going to rise -2. Well, obviously, rising -2 means you're going down to 1, 2. And you're going to run 1, that means go over 1 to get to the next point. Notice it's the second point. You have to do two things. You have to go down to 1 over. Now you could draw your line from here, but you could, if you wanted to, put even more points on. Go down again from this. 1, 2 over 1. Anytime you can go from one point to another by using the slope, down 2 over 1. Notice how they all line up. Not only that, you could have said, well, I put this as -2 over 1, but you could have written it also as 2 over -1, because that means the same thing. When you have a negative, it could be in the numerator, it could be in the denominator. In that case, if you're from this point, your rise is 2, you go up 2, but your run is -1, meaning you'd have to go 1 to the left. Notice how everything lines up. Here's what your line looks like. You should have got and this is the graph using the slope and the y-intercept. Is there anybody who has a question about that? Okay. So what have we seen so far? Let's just review a little bit of what we talked about. We talked about graphing lines. We saw that it's the best way to do it, or at least what I think the easiest way to do it, is to put it in what we call the y equals mx plus b form. Now remember, you'll know that you're dealing with a line because there are no exponents, not on the y and not on the x. So that's it. It's called a linear equation, or sometimes called a first degree equation. The degree of the equation is the highest exponent. The highest exponent we have, well, you don't see any exponents, so they're understood to 1. That's why this is called a first degree equation. And any first degree equation is going to give us a line. This happens to be a slant line that has a slope of -2. And what that indicates is as you're going on your line from the left to the right, you're going to be going down. We talked about the fact that when we have slopes, there's a lot that we can tell from the slope. We can tell when two lines are parallel. I have another line over here. Parallel means that they never ever going to meet. That line would also have to have a slope of -2. Parallel line have the same slope. So any line that's going to be parallel to the line y equals -2x plus 3 is going to start y equals -2x something. but it has to have a slope of -2 in order for it to be parallel. We're going to keep this in mind. We also said that if lines are perpendicular, which means the lines are meeting at right angles, they have opposite reciprocal slopes. What does that mean? Well, remember we said the slope of this line was -2/1. The opposite reciprocal slope would then be flip over the fraction and switch its sign. This is negative. The slope of the perpendicular line is going to have a +1/2. Remember, we always look at a slope as it's a fraction. If it's a whole number, we put it over 1. If we're talking about the perpendicular line, we're going to have to flip it over. That's what a reciprocal does. And we're going to have to change its sign. So that's something that we had mentioned before. If I have two lines, let's say I have one line being y equals -2x + 3 is line number 1. And suppose I tell you that line number 2 is y equals 1/2 x - 15. I would right away know these two lines have to be perpendicular because their slopes are negative reciprocals. They're opposite reciprocals. It doesn't matter what the b's are. You just look at the m's, the numbers in front of the x. Again, you have to have y equals, and then you look at the number in front of the x, the coefficient of the x. And if those two are opposite and reciprocals, then the lines are going to be perpendicular. So notice the slope business gives us a lot of information. So how do we find the slope of the line? Well, we did it. If I gave you the equation of the line, all you have to do is look at the number in front of the x. The coefficient of the x is the slope. But sometimes I don't give you the actual equation of the line. I just give you some of the points on the line. Let's say, okay, I'm erasing this now. I gave you these 2 points. -2, -1, and -3, -4. And I said these are 2 of the points on that I know are on a line. And I want to know what is the slope of that line. How do we find the slope of the line when we don't know the equation of the line? We just know some of the points. What we're eventually going to do is we're going to go not only from knowing the 2 points on the line, we're going to be able to write the equation of the line. That's what we're aiming for. Now, let me give you a picture of what's going on here. Let's draw these 2 points. One point is the point -2, -1, which means, remember how you get to a point. If the first number is the left and right number, the x coordinate. So you have to go 2 to the left because it's negative. And the second number is how much to go up and down from there. So from there, we're going -1, which means we're going down 1. Notice you get 2 numbers gives you 1 point. The other point on this line is the point -3, -4, which means then we'll go 3 to the left and 4 down. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's the point. And if I were to join these 2 points, if I took my, I hope I'm drawing this well, I would get a line that looks approximately like this. Remember, 2 points will give you the line, but you have to go further and further. But they're just 2 of the points. There are millions of points on this line. We have 2 of the points. Now, it looks as I go from left to right that I'm going up. That would mean that my slope is positive. But I don't know what the slope is. How do I find the slope? Well, if you had this on graph paper, you could probably find the rise and the run and then figure it out. But since I'm not doing this on graph paper, which means that my drawing is not very exact, I'd like to have another method for finding the slope, and there is. It's called the slope formula. It goes like this. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Where the x's and y's that I'm talking about are the coordinates, the x's and y's of the points. Notice these are not exponents, they are subscripts. It's just the difference between y2 and y1 is this is saying this is a y of the second point, this is a y of the first point. Notice we subtract the y2 minus y1 over the x2 minus x1. Let me show you exactly how it works on this problem. Pick either one of your points to be your first point. Now, since this is written first, I'm going to call this my first point, which obviously makes the second, our second point. So this is what we're going to call the x1, and this is going to be the y1. The x1 and the y1 refer to the x and y of the first point. This is going to be your x2 and your y2. The x and y of the second point. All you have to do, and I always do this when I have 2 points, I designate, I specifically write on top x1, y1 on one of them, x2, y2 on the other one. And don't mix it up. Don't do x1 and y2. x1 has to go with y1, x2 has to go with y2. And it wouldn't have mattered if you called this the first point and this the second. Your answer will be the right as long as you're consistent. What do? We take y2, which I see is -4, minus my y1, which is -1. Now, I'm putting it in parentheses because I have 2 negatives here. This is the subtract -1. So to make, not to mess up those 2, I put a parentheses around that second number to indicate that, so I keep it keeps me aware that I have 2 negatives. Then I go to the denominator. What is the x2? The x2 is -3 minus, we do minus x1, which is -2. So again, I'm going to put this -2 in parentheses. Okay, and now I have to just work this out. First of all, if you recall, when you have 2 negatives, a minus subtracting a negative number, what you're going to get is -1, -4 plus 1. The minus and the minus become a plus. The bottom also, -3 plus 2. So how much is -4 plus 1? It's -3. How much is -3 plus 2? it's -1. So my slope comes out to be -3 over -1. And we usually simplify it. Remember, a negative divided by a negative is positive. So you can say your slope is 3, or if you prefer, you could say a 3 over 1. But the slope in this case is 3. So we're able to find the slope of the line by just using the points. We didn't even, I drew the line, but I didn't even have to. I could have just gone to the points, and right away I would know the slope of the line. Okay, I'm going to give you a problem to try while I take attendance, and we'll see if you can figure out the slope of a line. Okay, I am going to erase the picture here. I'm going to leave. I'm going to erase this because this is just the work that we did. I'm going to leave the formula. You must know this formula by heart. If you get it on a test, you must know what this formula for the slope is. So somehow, maybe on the back of your notebook, inside your inside cover, you could write this is the first important equation that a formula we're talking about, the slope of the line. What if I have a line, the 2 points that we have are 2, 3, and -8, 1. Okay, here's what I want you to do. Number 1, I want you to find the slope of the line. And number 2, I want you to tell me what is the slope of the parallel line, and what's the slope of the perpendicular line. Okay, so this is a lot of work to do. And I'm going to let you do this while I am taking attendance. Olivia August. Isis.
Here.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Alvaro Blake. Lewis Hart. Lewis K.O. Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Emma.
Good morning. I'm here.
Good morning. Demetrius. Desmond. Shania.
I'm here.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Caden Harris. Caden. Kayla Harris.
I'm here.
Yeah, I saw that you were here. Sanjita. Oriana. Hi, good morning. I knew you were here. Tahira Joseph.
I'm here.
Hi, good morning. Michaela Martinez. Kiana,
Here.
hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Carleaf. Hi, good morning. Jenna,
Good morning.
good morning. Tatiana. Tatiana Sanchez. Naya, I know you're here because I was speaking to you. Kazandu. Kazandu,
Good morning, Professor. I'm here.
good morning. Thank you. Trina Small. Trina. Jean Thomas. Okay. Sanjita, I didn't hear, I don't know if you heard me. If anybody has an answer, please put it on the chat. I'm giving you a few more minutes. By the way, the examples I've been working on are from the practice example sheet 2, which you can find in your weekly folder for week 3. weekly folder, week 3, there is an attachment, and I suggest it's the practice examples for chapter 2, and there are two sheets that you could print out, two attachments. One is the question sheet and the other is the answer sheet. Okay, I think we should just do this together now. So the first thing I ask you to do is to find the slope of the line between the points 2, 3 and -8, 1. Now, if you recall what I told you to do, I said pick one point as your first point and one as your second. And you could do it either one. You just have to be consistent. Let's say that I always pick the first one as the x1, y1, and the second is my x2, y2. I actually like to write it right above the points so that I can easily stick it into the formula. So what's the slope gonna be? It's gonna be y2, which we see is 1, minus y1, which is -3. So y2 minus y1 is 1 minus 3. I'm just substituting in the numbers. Now in the denominator, I'm doing x2, which is -8, minus x1 minus 2. So these are my numbers that I have to figure out. Now be careful with it. If you want, you can use your calculator, but if you're using the calculator, do the top separately. Do 1 minus 3, which will give you -2. And now do the bottom separately. -8 minus 2, which gives you -10. And a negative over negative is positive, and we could reduce this. This reduces to 1/5. It's not wrong to say it's -2 over -10, but usually, since we would like to compare different answers, we want to make sure that we have our slope in the simplest form. So the slope of the line between the points 2, 3 and -8, 1 is 1/5. What does that mean about any line that's parallel to this line? Well, we know that parallel lines have the same slope. So a parallel line would also have to have a slope of 1/5. If the lines are going to be parallel, they're going to have the same slope. So they must be another line parallel to this line will have a slope of 1/5. Okay, I knew you were here. Okay, what about perpendicular lines? Well, perpendicular lines, we know that their slopes are opposite reciprocals. So if my original line has a slope of 1/5, I have to flip it over, which will give me 5/1, but I also have to switch its sign. It's opposite. This is a positive answer. This one is going to be negative. -5/1, or if you wanted to, you could just write it as -5, because as you remember, any number that has a 1 on the bottom could be written as the whole number. So this answers all the questions, but notice how important this formula was because it enabled us to find the slope of the line. Would you like to try another one, just finding the slope of the line? Where everybody's okay with this? Okay, let's try another one. Okay, I'm going to erase most of it, except I'll leave on the formula. Here, I'm putting it on top. at one point be the 0.5 -6. And the other point I'm using is 2 -4. Again, what we want to do is we want to find the slope of the line. And so I'm going to erase, I'm going to give you a few minutes. And I'm going to erase this because it's making the board look so messy. And I'm leaving the formula on the board because we're using it. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I erase it too early? I'm sorry. Okay. I wish I had a bigger board that I could use because I find that I would like to leave some of this stuff on the board and go to the next thing, but this is what I'm stuck with, so. Okay, let's work on this together. Okay, again, we want to find the slope of the line, so we're going to be using the slope formula. Every time they give us 2 points and they ask you what is the slope, you're going to use this formula. Again, I'm going to call this my x1 and my y1. And I'm gonna call this my x2 and my y2. Now I have to be careful with the signs. Be very careful when you put it in. Okay, here's my formula. Y2, which I see is -4, minus y1, which is -6. Now, anytime I have a negative followed by a negative, I put a parentheses around the second number because I don't want, if I'm not careful, it might look like it's just one negative and it's two negative signs. X2 we see is 2 minus 5. Okay, so now I have to simplify this. Now, the first thing I know is that when I have two minuses, a minus and a minus becomes a plus. So this becomes -4 plus 6 over 2 minus 5. And -4 plus 6 gives me +2. Again, you should, if you make mistakes with your adding and subtracting of sign numbers, use your calculator. Remember, I told you to get a calculator. Use your calculator so that you make sure you get the right answers and do it separately. And 2 minus 5, you're going to get -3. So your slope here is negative. You could write it as 2 over -3, or you could write it with the negative in front of it. That's probably the better way, -2/3. Again, what is this telling us about the slope? The line, as we're going from left to right, has to be a line going down because the slope is negative. Any question about that now? How many people were able to get that answer? I'd like to see more response on the chat. Okay. Are you following where you're making mistakes? Would you like to try another one like this? Okay, let's try one more. Okay, I see most people are having some difficulty. Let's try it. Another example. This is very important. You have to be able to find the slope of the line. For sure, when it comes to the midterm, there's going to be questions that involve using this slope formula. I'm going to erase what's over here. Is it okay if I erase what's over here, or are you still copying? Okay, nobody answered. That means I can. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to move the formula up higher, so it's right in front of us. The slope of the line is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, here are 2 points. 5, 11, and 3, 4. Find the slope between these 2 points. I'm gonna give you a few minutes again. Anybody need more time? Okay, I don't see anybody indicating that they wanted more time, though nobody gave me an answer. I would have liked to see some people's answers. Don't be afraid to put on an answer thinking it's gonna be wrong, so it will be wrong. Everybody else is making mistakes. It's good to try and see if you're doing things correctly. Okay, let's look at this. We have to pick one of our points to be our first point. I always pick this one to be my first point. And I always point this for no good reason. I should maybe try and sometimes do this as the first and this is the second, and then switch it and make this the second. But I tend to keep my first point they give me as a first point and the other one is a second point. And I stick my numbers into my equation. Y2, which I picked to be 4, minus Y1, which is 11, over X2, which is 3, minus X1, which is 5. The first thing I do is just take the numbers, the actual numbers, and stick them into the formula. Now I go and work it out. 4 minus 11. Now you could do this on a calculator. Just simply do 4 minus 11. It'll give you -7. Three minus 5 will give you -2. And a negative over negative is positive, so we get 7 over 2. Now, this can't be simplified any further, and it's fine. Leave it like this. Don't make it into a decimal. Leave it as a fraction. Actually, we want our slope to be a fraction. What does it mean that the slope is 7 over 2? It means as you go up 7, you're going to go 2 to the right. Rise 7, 2 to the right, or vice versa. Go down 7 and then go 2 to the left. That would be -7 over -2, which means the same exact thing. Was anybody able to get this answer? Excellent. Excellent. I'm glad to see that. Anybody else? Okay. Is it getting clearer? Are you, we're going to be doing more, but I'm going to add some. Okay, great. All right. Now, why am I emphasizing this whole concept of slope? Okay. If you left it -7 over -2, that is correct. What usually will happen, though, is on a Delta math test or problem, it would accept this, I think, as the correct answer, unless it says in simplest form. But when you get to the midterm and the final are both multiple choice questions, and they won't give you this choice. They'll only give you this choice. So you have to be aware. Now, sometimes when you see it, it hits you and you say, oh yeah, I forgot to reduce it. But really the best thing is to try and simplify your answers. But it's not wrong if you didn't. Okay, so here's what I want to do next. The main focus of what we're going to be doing for the rest of today and probably for Monday as well, is writing equations of lines. What does that mean? Well, we started this whole discussion of linear equations by looking, I gave you an equation, something like y equals negative 2x plus 3. And I said, graph it. You had the equation, you wanted to find the picture of the line. Now we're going backwards. I'm going to describe a line to you, and I'm going to ask you what is the equation of the line, which means that we're going to want to write the y equals mx plus b form of that for that line. And sometimes I'll give you a picture of the line, and sometimes I'll give you just a description of the line. And what you're going to have to do is figure out the particular m, the particular slope of the line, and the b, the particular y-intercept of that line. And then you'll have the equation of the line. So let's start with, I'll start with some simpler ones, and then we'll go to some that are a little bit more complex. If you want to know what example I'm doing example 8 on the practice sheet 2. It reads like this. Write a slope-intercept equation for the line. That means the y equals mx plus b they want you to write. That's what slope-intercept means. With the given characteristics. The m is 2. They're telling me I have a line whose slope is 2, and it passes through the point 1, negative 3. I'm describing a line to you. I want to know what is the equation of that line. Again, that means I have to fill in the m and I have to fill in the b. Now the m, I know they told me the slope of the line was going to be 2. So this particular equation is going to be y equals 2x plus b. When we're trying to write the equation of the line, we work on the slope first. There will be information given that will allow us to figure out the slope of the line. Sometimes they'll give us a slope, as they did in this case. Sometimes they'll give us other information. We'll first work on finding the slope and sticking it in. So we know that this equation of this line is going to be y equals 2x plus b. What we still have to do is figure out what could the b be. So here's what we do. They told me that one of the points is that on this line is the point 1, negative 3. Now this is not the y-intercept. I can't say the y-intercept is negative 3 because this is the y of the point. Because a y-intercept only occurs when the x is 0. But I can still use the point to figure out the line. Why? Because in order for this to be a point on this line, it has to be, you would have to be able to put in the x as 1 and the y is negative 3. That's what it means that a point is on a line, that when you take the coordinates, the x and y value of the point, and you stick it into the equation, it works. So let's stick in the x, we're going to stick in to be 1. The y we're going to stick in to be negative 3. Let's see what we have. We're going to get negative 3 equals 2. Now it's 2, this means, since they're right next to each other, it means that you're multiplying 2 times 1 plus b. Notice we're left with an equation where the one thing we don't know is b. We're going to solve for b. So this becomes negative 3 equals 2 times 1 is just 2 plus b. And I want to get the b alone, so I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. Remember, this is an equation. I just have to get the b alone. -3 minus 2 is -5. That's what my b is. By sticking in the point that they told me, one of the points, all we need to know is if I have the slope, I only need to know one other point to figure out the equation of the line. Just stick the point into the equation and it'll work itself out so that your final answer becomes y equals 2x minus 5. And looking at it this way, we can see that the slope is 2, which is what they told us. We also can see that the y-intercept of this line is -5. So if I wanted to, I could now draw the line easily because I have the equation in slope-intercept form. But notice we started with a description of the line. We were told what the slope is, we were told a point on the line, and we were able to write the equation from this description. Okay, let's try another one like this. Here's our next problem. I'm going to give you one to try. I want you to write the equation of a line whose slope is -3 and goes through the point 4, 5. Okay, so just like we had this, I'm going to leave this on the board so you can follow it. I'm giving you the slope, I'm giving you a point. Can you write the equation of the line? Okay, let's see if we can do this problem. I'm gonna erase this now so I can write that. Again, we're looking for the y equals mxb form of the equation for the line that we described has a slope of -3 and it goes through the point 4, 5. So again, I first put in my m. I know in this case the slope is -3, so I can write this as y equals 3x plus b. The thing that I still don't know is what is the b. I have to find the y-intercept. So what I'm going to do is in my equation, where I see the x, I'm going to put 4, and where I see the y, I'm going to put 5. And that means that 5 equals -3 times 4 plus b. And now I have to solve this equation. 5. Now -3 times 4 is -12. Be very careful with those signs. A negative times a positive is negative. Plus b. So now I have to bring this 12 to the other side. So 5 plus 17. 5 plus 12 gives me 17. That's what my b is. So now I know the slope is -3. The y-intercept is 17. So my equation becomes y equals -3x plus 17. Okay. Okay, let's try one other type of example. What if I don't give you the slope, but I give you 2 points that are on the line? What if I tell you I have 2 points on the line? Trying to find one that's not so difficult. Okay. Let's do this example. Suppose I give you 2 points on a line. -4, 2. And 3, -5. Here are 2 points. There's a line between these 2 points. I'm gonna draw it, but you don't really have to. I'm just drawing it so you can see what it looks like. -4, 2 means you're going 4 to the left and 2 up. Here's point number 1. 3, -5 means you're going 3 to the right and 5 down. Is right here. And you get this line that looks like this. Sorry about this. Okay. Here's a line. So we have a picture of the line. We know what the line looks like. What's the equation of the line? What's the y equals mx plus b that goes with this line? That's what we'd like to know. Anytime we have 2 points, we should be able to draw the line, and we should be able to write the equation of the line. So how do we write the equation of the line? Well, remember what I told you. There are 2 things you have to know when you want to write the equation of the line. You want to write this, find the slope. You want to find the y-intercept. And the first thing we always look for is the slope, especially when we have 2 points, because we know we can find the slope using this formula. Let's call this our x1, y1, and this our x2, y2, like we did before. And let's find the slope by doing y2, which is -5, minus y1, which is 2, over x2, which is 3, minus x1, which is -4. Remember, here's where we're going to have to be careful because of that extra, you have 2 minus signs. But in the top, we have a -5 minus 2, which gives us -7. And in the bottom, we have, this is becomes actually a 3 plus 4, because the minus and the minus become a plus. So I end up with -7 over 7, which reduces to -1. The slope of this line happens to be -1. And you could probably see it on your graph. If you had graphed it, if you go down 1, 1 to the right, down 1, 1 to the right. That's what's happening on this line. You see that it's got a negative slope. It has a slope of -1, which means in our equation, we can replace the m by -1. So it's y equals -1x plus b. And we're back to where we were with the other problems, where we already know the slope, but what we don't know is the y-intercept, the b. So we take either one of the points. We have 2 points. You can take any point that's on the line. We know 2 of them. We could pick either one. Let's say we pick the -4, 2. That means in place of the x, I'm going to put a -4. And in place of the y, I'm going to put 2. So that'll give me 2 equals -1 times -4 plus b. -1 times -4 is +4. So I get 2 equals 4 plus b. And therefore, when I subtract the 4 from both sides, it gives me that my b is -2. So now I have both the slope -1 and the b, the y-intercept is -2. And therefore my equation becomes, I know my picture doesn't look too exact, but that's because I don't have graph paper. It would have come out exact on the graph paper. Y equals negative, you could either write it -1x minus 2, Or you could write it y equals negative x minus 2, because when there's a coefficient of 1, you don't have to put it in. And this would be your answer. So we started out with 2 points, and from those 2 points, we were able to, number one, find the slope of the line, and then stick in one of the points into the equation to find the y-intercept so that we could write the whole equation of the line. Okay, I'm going to stop this right now. I just want to mention 2 other things that are important to know, and they're not exactly, this is probably one of the most difficult topics in the course because it involves so many steps. So we're going to leave this, we're going to come back to this on Monday, but I just want to mention 2 special lines. I don't think we mentioned them the other day. And I want to remind you, talk about what the equation and the slopes of these 2 special lines are. Does anybody still need to be copying this? Okay. When we talk about a line, we talk about a line being in the form y equals mx plus b. Even if it's, in other words, it has a slope and it has a y-intercept. And if we know it, we can draw the line. This actually represents a slanted line. Either a line that's, as you're going from left to right, is rising, or a line that's going down as you go from left to right. These are what we call slant lines. But there are 2 special types of lines. There's something called horizontal lines. Which are lines that go straight across. They don't go up, they don't go down, they just go straight across. And then there are vertical lines. Lines go straight up and down. And those equations are not in the form of y equals mx plus b. Talking about a horizontal line. A horizontal line just has an equation y equals a number. In other words, there's not going to be any x in the equation. There's only going to be a y. Let's say we have this line. The line that goes straight across, horizontal. The equation of this line is y equals 4. It's crossing the y-axis at 4, its y-intercept is 4, so y equals 4 is the equation of the line. And what that's telling you is no matter where you go on this line, at this point, its y value will always be 4 because you're always going up 4. You can go up 7 to the left, but to get to the point, a line, you'd have to go up 4. The y values on this line are all 4. Your equation is y equals 4. Let me mention, that means there's no m here, because if m was 0, it would be 0 times, if this would be 0, 4, your b is 4. The slope of this line here is 0. This is a line that's going straight across. Remember, slope means rise over run. As you go from one point to another point on the line, you're not going up or down, you're going zero, you're just going across. The slope of horizontal lines are zero. And the equation is an equation that only has a y and a number. It does not have any x in the equation. Anytime you see y equals something, you know that that's going to be a horizontal line. What about a vertical line? Let's say I have this line here. Line is going up and down and going through 2 on the x-axis. Notice the horizontal line crossed the y-axis, but it didn't cross the x-axis. A vertical line will cross the x-axis, but it will not cross the y-axis. This line has an equation x equals 2. We know it's x equals a number is the equation of a vertical line. This is crossing through 2, so it's x equals 2. Because every point on this line is, to get to this line, you have to go 2 to the right. Then you can go up or down, but your x is always going to be 2 on all the points on this line are going to have an x equals 2. So again, the vertical line has no y in its equation, just x equaling a number. The number being where it's crossing the x axis. In this case, the slope does not exist. Sometimes the term is undefined. The slope is undefined, that means it does not exist. Or sometimes we just say these all say the same thing. There is no slope. There is no number because in this case, remember, slope is rise over run. If to get from one point to the other point, you have to go up, but then so your numerator is a number, but on the denominator, you're not going right or left, so your run is 0. Any number with a 0 in the denominator doesn't exist. There's no such thing as dividing by 0. So your slope in that case is undefined. So these are two special cases that you just have to remember. They're not difficult because the horizontal line only has a y in it. It doesn't have any x. The vertical line only has an x in it. It doesn't have any y. So let's say I gave you a point on the graph. Let's say I gave you this point. -1, 3. And I said, I want the equation of a vertical line through that point. Now remember, vertical means up and down. You'll remember horizontal because it's like the horizon. You look, it goes wide. But vertical means up and down. What is the equation of this line? Well, if you remember, we said a vertical line only has x equals. So the vertical line is x equals. Now, what is the x going to be equal to? So you have to look at the x value. It's going to be -1. The 3 is telling you a y value. But when we're talking about vertical lines, the equation is x equals, so we do x equals -1. Okay. I'm going to stop here. I think there was a lot of tough stuff in this lesson. Don't forget, if you haven't done your quiz on Delta Math yet, to do it. If you did it and you're not happy with your mark, I can reset the questions that you got wrong. I guess I'll do that with everybody. I won't, if you got the question right, there's no reason to reset it. I'll reset the ones that you got wrong, so you, and give you extended time to work on that. And, this whole concepts of graphing lines that we've been talking about, that's not part of that first quiz. It's quiz quiz number 1 was on the first chapter. We're in chapter 2. We're going to be finishing this on Monday. We'll be discussing this again on Monday. I know this is tough, but we've got to get through this. Okay. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask me?
Not at the moment.
What?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Everybody have a nice weekend. And again, do the work. Also, there is going to be a homework on Delta Math on chapter 1, on chapter 2. That's going to be due for Monday. So let's look out for that. But first, make sure you've done the quiz. Okay. Have a good weekend. I'm going to be, unless somebody, I will stay on for a few minutes if anybody